Hi, everybody. Welcome to the IC Topic Chats for today, June 20th, 2024. Very excited to have Jason Ravitz with us again. Jason presented 3 years ago, and I said, he's like, thanks for letting me have a slot again. And I said, Jason, you've been coming. He's actually attended the sixth most of anybody who's shown up, except for me. And that kind of follows like Kurt Stuke, Ann Reed, or Ann Price, uh, Jesse. You're like up there with the highest number. So frankly, you could present every year if you wanted to, Jason. You're one of our regulars, so we love you. But he's going to be talking about our shiny dashboards today. He's going to tell us how to super impress all of our clients. And I know that just right before we started the recording, one of our regulars also said how much she loves working with Jason, and she's subcontracted with him to do this great work. So I'm not going to name that individual, but I'm just going to say clearly, if you can't figure this out, Jason would love to work with you. And so I'm just going to put that out there because I get nothing out of it, but Jason does, and I like him. So with that, Jason, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let you take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. I'm so happy to be presenting here to my fellow evaluators. The last time I presented to this group was in March 2021 about evaluation of technology, company work, and foundation work. And I've learned so much from these sessions and hope I can give you some good information today. I know we share some common interests in providing better services and insights to our clients and supporting more efficient and effective problem solving using data. And we like to share tips about how to build up our independent consulting business. And I've been exploring ways to do this and landed on our Shiny as a valuable strategy. My goals today are to introduce you to R and Shiny as a platform for data collection, analysis, and use. Discuss how these tools can enhance your evaluation services, including your workflow and helping engage your clients with their data. And hopefully some of you will decide this is worth exploring further. And if you're already on this path or thinking about it, I hope to provide some insights that will help you. First of all, my PhD is in instructional design, so I'm a firm believer that you need to know your audience. So I was thinking before we get going, I'd like to have a show of hands, if you don't mind. How many of you have used R before? And actually, I'm not sure I can see you. Actually, if you don't mind, could you type in the chat? Um, Type 1 if this is your first time hearing about R. Type 2 if you're a little familiar. Type 3 if you've tried it before. 4 if you're committed to learning or using R, and 5 if you're an experienced R or user that I need to know about. Okay, I'm seeing some numbers here. That's a little bit easier. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Got a few fives. That's great. Okay, well, if I'm looking forward to discussing this further. Thanks, everybody. So everyone's R journey is a little different, so I want to share a little bit about mine. I started writing scripts and when I was doing large-scale survey studies using SPSS, and this was to allow transparency with my postdoc advisor and team and allowed us to reproduce findings more easily. And I also created a script for inter-rater reliability for a nursing school that wanted to check reliability and analyze its data every semester. So I helped them out and we produced an article about that. My first dashboards were in Salesforce for my job at the Buck Institute for Education, studying project-based learning, PBL. They're now PBL Works. And the dashboards were to support school coaching, but also business operations. And we brought in data from surveys from teachers to inform school coaches, and then reports from the coaches from the school visits. And I also consulted with New Tech Network, which is a school-based school reform network in Napa, also on Salesforce dashboards. And then finally, I really got into this and started getting into R when I was at Google. I created Plex dashboards for monitoring university programs. And this was for public reporting and senior management presentations. And I guess the takeaway from this is that I've always been interested in large-scale data analysis and the overlap with using data for technology and learning. And I've also grown more interested in evaluation capacity building and empowering my clients to use data effectively. There's a link there to my past projects that you can find on my website if you want to learn more. I think everyone who's worked extensively with data can relate to this image. I've seen estimates that data practitioners can spend even more of their valuable time, 40 to 80%, finding, cleaning, and organizing data. And working with data is a marathon that many don't finish. By finish, we mean going the last mile in this image, which is actually analyzing the data, generating insights, and taking action. And as I presented last time, a few years ago, having data alone was just stage one in my stages of evaluation use model. So my first R project was leading research for the Google Coursera Professional IT Certificate Program. I had a colleague at Coursera who had only ever used R, and we wrote code together to provide independent analysis and verify findings at our respective companies. So this is a key point is the reproducibility of the findings. We could check and reproduce each other's work and confirm findings for our senior managers, and using shared code made that possible. We ran a pilot study and continued using the code for the final report when it was the end of the program. This program since expanded massively, which feels really, really good. Um, when I started when I started evaluation by design, I was running surveys and analyzing data in R, and I wanted to offer dashboards to help clients inform their work and empower their decision making. R was free. Honestly, I was kind of annoyed with SPSS marketing and licenses, and there was a buzz about R in the industry. So I'm going to get to some example projects, but I want to explain a little bit what R is for those of you who are less familiar. Here's some answers from the web: a powerful tool for data collection, cleaning, analysis, a statistical programming language used in many fields, and it's free and open source, which means there's a large community of people who can support you in your journey. So my answer is statistics. Statistics, yes, every statistic you can possibly want is in there, but there's also much more. And that includes data cleaning, data collection from different sources, the analysis and statistics, but also really powerful data visualization, and then automated reporting, which I use a tool called R Markdown, which lets you have reproducible and automated reports, and then other types of workflow automation for sending emails, doing repetitive tasks, managing data, etc. Shiny is the R package, and I think you can also use Python with it, that allows for building an interactive web applications. And so here you can create user interfaces and customize them endlessly, and serve these up over the web to share insights, let your clients explore data yourself. And this is through server-side processing. So you have a UI and then you have a server side that reacts to user input. You can also have authentication, and when you deploy it, it's cross-platform, works on mobile or the web. So it's pretty awesome. So in summary, you can reproduce findings more easily, ensure consistent results, minimize errors through automation, um, add visual elements to your reports, let users interact, pull in information from multiple sources and have automated and instant update to data, and then handle complex data and workflows. So this might be overstating it a little bit, but the way I'm looking at it for today is you get data collection plus statistics, plus data visualization, plus reporting, plus workflow. It's not just one of these, it's all of these. So it's I've seen on the web, it's a full-fledged development environment for cross-platform apps. And my view of this is kind of like it's having used a lot of different tools. It's kind of like Salesforce with web design and HTML, with world-class data viz, with the ability to create high quality reports and track changes and quality maps and statistics and automated workflows, emails, Excel, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of why I'm excited about using this, and it's a lot of fun for me. Here's some, so now I'm going to give you some examples from some reports that just used R, and then we'll get into Shiny after. Um, This was data from a technology outreach program to early childhood centers in New Mexico, and it's tracking outreach efforts and success in interviewing representative centers. And so this was from the dashboard. We kept track of how many calls were being made. Funding dried up in June, so there were no calls in June. You can see. Okay, I think you can see my pointer. And then this is the representativeness of the interviews, and it's a graph showing the population of all the licensed centers, and then the completed sample. And it kind of shows that we're getting a pretty representative sample. Like we got the biggest one, and we missed a couple here, but we got these guys and this guy, and the shape of the curve overall looks good. So there's other statistics to show representativeness, but I thought that this was a nice visualization. Here's some other charts from R that show, I think this was a different round or different project, but shows surveys received and cumulative surveys by month. And this was a social emotional learning project, validating this program in a rural New Mexico middle school. And again, you've got the bubble chart showing gains in grade point average between non-EYF and EYF participants. And I like standardized residuals, and this also showed a significant difference. And the biggest difference was for eighth graders in algebra, actually. I think this connection between SEL and academic learning continues to be a really hot topic. And here's an example of from one of the subjects showing the interaction of the non-EYF students' grades going down and the EYF students' grades going up. So that's powerful evidence. And this is just another SEL pilot, actually, where I did factor analysis in R and ran raw differences and effect sizes between the two groups and kind of validated the project. I think this chart actually came from Sheets, so full disclosure. Another study is that was a European study of women leaders in technology. And they're looking at leadership style between transformational leadership style and transactional. And women were much more transformational than men. The sample size was a little small, so we did this fancy report, but I don't think we were going to get peer reviewed probably. But you can see here that women were much more likely to, for example, say that they heighten others' desires to succeed in their work compared to men. This is a t-test, and I don't know if you can see, there's a asterisk showing statistical significance. And then these are called jitter plots, which show the mean differences, but also the overall distribution, which is really helpful. And this is women stronger than men on transformational leadership and men more passive avoidant in this case. And I also did reliability analysis and things to help support that report. Okay, now what you've all been waiting for is Shiny. So I'm going to show you, if we have time, I'm going to actually pull up some dashboards. So if some of these slides are too small to read, then bear with me because I'm hoping to show you later. But I'll start out with the big one. This has been a major project and a product that many people are using. It's coming out of a statewide survey I conducted with the West Virginia Department of Ed, and it's measuring 21st century teaching and learning skills. And the teacher version has been used all over the world many times, especially in Philippines for EU baseline study across 5 countries, etc. But for evaluation by design, I created a student version with teacher dashboards. And this lets them guide instruction, see their students on when they first come into the class, and measure impacts. And so this is an example of a student. This is an example of a student profile that you get. And then you also get group profile for your class, how many times they've used these skills, and a change profile. And this will also manage it. You'll see that this is useful for teachers, coaches, funders, and programs. And it's self-managed. And I have it in a couple languages too. So this is how it's self-managed. This is the shiny interface where when some teachers can log into the system, and then they'll see a list of their students and who's replied and responded to the survey, and they can send their own reminders. So that saves me a lot of time. Even if they don't log in and do this, I can log in for them and do this, and it helps a lot. Okay, this next one, I know you're not going to be able to read, but I've zoomed in on a couple of these, and I can show you more later. This was research experience for undergraduates, which is a really cool NSF program that I evaluated a few years at Rutgers University and also expanded to University of Minnesota. And this was weekly check-in data where students provided feedback on their mentoring and their sense of accomplishment and their interest and the challenge and challenges and accomplishments. So on the left, you have the names of the students, which is, grayed out here, and the ability to filter by gender and whether or not they were in the program or not. And actually, originally I was just evaluating one particular program, but when they saw this, they wanted to use it with the whole university. So I got to get non-program data too, which was cool for evaluation. It added a whole nother level. It also explains on the left that students were the ability to brush data, which means that you could select particular students and it would update the data instantly to show their experience. Here in the middle, you've got ratings of challenge over time, ratings of accomplishment, and then a scatter plot of challenge versus accomplishment. Now it's kind of testing. I don't know if you're familiar with flow theory, but I was kind of testing flow theory about what the appropriate level of challenge and accomplishment and where the sweet spot is. And then when you update the data, you get qualitative data too. And I'm not talking a lot about qualitative data, but this is really valuable, being able to see student stories. And then these are their perceptions on the right. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on these because I
So
know you can.
Jason, I got to
Yeah,
ask you. I see you've cited the author that's well known for flow. Can you say his last name for me?
not on a recorded session.
Sorry, I had to break it up because that's just
I
too
say
funny.
Sisementali, but I'm sure that's wrong.
I think it's Mihai. She, I can't even say it now that I try to say it out
Okay.
loud.
I actually
Sorry.
know the answer to this, so I'm going to
Please
interrupt you.
do
It's
it.
Cheeks
Go.
and Mihai. It's Cheeks and
Chicks and
Mihai.
Mihai. See,
Mhm.
sorry, I saw that, and
Thank you.
I've always want to see people see if we can do it. Now, as soon as I thought I knew how to say it, I couldn't say it. Thanks for that, Becky. Go ahead,
Okay,
Jason.
absolutely.
I didn't mean to break up your.
No problem.
Oh,
No problem.
see how I did that?
You stumped me on that one. I've read all his books though. Um, yeah. So moving along. So this is what the left looks like, where you have the students and the filtering, and then the explanation of brushing. And then this is a couple of those dashboards. So here's rating of challenge over time, and then here's the idea of challenge versus accomplishment, and seeing whether or not there's a positive correlation or a curvilinear relationship. And then here's below where you get actually qualitative data on the challenge level and the accomplishment level for the selected students. And so I want to say this was really helpful when I was writing the final report. I had pre and post data for the students, but I was also able to pull in their weekly experience and share case studies about, here's an example of a student who didn't have a great experience at the end, and what was happening with them during the week. And so I was really able to make some good recommendations about that, including their rating of how their peer communication and mentor communication was. And so it really, having this weekly data was useful for the mentors who check the data, and then also for providing the insights on the final report about actual individual student experiences. It was really valuable. And I actually thought that I put all this effort into this because I thought I was going to get to do this for all the REUs, but then they hired another company to do those evaluations. Drats. Okay, this is another interesting one. This was for the Good Schools project at Arizona State and Cal State East Bay. And they called me because their Qualtrics experts couldn't do what they wanted. They wanted to have people be able to fill out a survey and then compare their responses to the responses of others as soon as they finished. This was kind of based on the implicit bias test at Harvard, if anyone's ever seen that. So I produced this dashboard, and you see the blue bars on the top are your response, and the gray are the other people's responses, and you can see how you compared to everyone else. And then it also calculates the percent who agreed with you overall on the elements of a good school and the structures of a good school. And when you run these filters, it automatically recalculates all of that. And there's also a table at the bottom that I'll show you that shows the responses. This is from more New Mexico technology outreach and distributing data casting units to rural schools. Data casting gives you internet over PBS airwaves, if you can believe it, or public airwaves. And this is monitoring outreach for technology access, and there's a few really cool things like validating self-reports about internet reliability by merging their survey data with speed test data. So they actually run online speed tests, and it shows, the very unreliable people had download means of 18, and the very reliable people had 104. So that's actually validating self-report data using actual speed test data. And then also showing that when they had better download speeds, they said they're more able to use different types of learning software. I think video conferencing showed this too. And showing that we were serving the intended audience. So the people who requested units had much lower speeds than the people who didn't request units. So you can imagine for program evaluation, that was useful, and then also tracking participation by district. And also to support the outreach, there were a number of components for this. Was another technology outreach in New Mexico, where there was a skills survey, and there was family learning literacy software, and there was a community of practice, and there was a website, and there were student lists. And this was a comprehensive way that the outreach people could come in and look up any person in the program and see which one of these they had completed, and to see their data. And then up here, you would actually, if you clicked on it, you'd get all the data that had been submitted for these. And last, this was from the food education program. This was the one with Becky, where they're looking at these indicators of, healthy eating indicators, how often you eat vegetables, how often you read nutritional labels, and looking at the difference between pre and mid results. So these were some of the stronger progress indicators, with the pre in red and the mid on in the blue, and you can see as they went from pre to mid, more students or more participants were doing these good, healthy eating. But what I want to highlight here, and Matt, I'll get to you one sec. What I want to highlight here is for evaluation purposes, I think it's really interesting to link these outcomes to participation rates, because it can provide more evidence if you show that the more they participated, the better their outcomes were. What's up, Matt? I see your hands raised.
I'm just kind of pernicious today. A couple people asked in the chat, and I figure this is a good time to kind of break up your presentation and throw some questions at you. How long did these dashboards take for you to build? And related to that, how long did it take you to learn this programming language?
I'm going to talk about that more in a minute, but the first ones took a really long time, and then it tends to get easier over time, and it depends on their complexity. Some of those last ones I showed that were just pulling in the data and showing the data were pretty easy. The filters are much harder. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the difficulty level of some of these.
Okay.
What was the other question?
Oh, it was how long it took you to learn the programming language. But I imagine if this is like a lot of things, it takes a lot of time the first time you do anything, but then you know what you're doing, and then you're able to kind of like reuse work. Is that fairly true for this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've developed a script or whatever, and that
Yeah.
script can be, you may have new data. You have an REU with one institution, and then you go to another institution, and you're
I can
perhaps
reuse some
bringing
of
the
it.
same kind of data, some tweaks here and there, and the next thing you know, you've got it without as much trouble as the first time around. And then the third
Yeah,
time you do
although
it's
I
even
tend to,
faster,
I
right?
always generally, yeah, and with the ones where they're reusing the same instrument, that's even more so the case. But I tend to customize quite a bit. I'll just add on this project, like we're pulling in data from multiple sources, cleaning and processing the data, imputing missing data, changing from numeric to text. I actually wrote a script to translate from Spanish to English to combine, and these charts are being updated in real time. I'm going to skip through some. These are some of the other filters we offered, looking at participation in other assistance programs, education levels, quality ratings. And this is another example of looking at open-ended data. At the bottom of the dashboard, you could search by gender or age, and then look at some of their open-ended responses. Last I'm going to show, this is actually an ArcGIS map from the New Mexico work, but the reason I'm showing it is because the data that went into this was pulled into the dashboard and cleaned from the surveys and then fed back into ArcGIS. So even if you're using a different dashboard or maps program, you still need to process data and prepare it for use. And that's something that R and Shiny are really good at. Now, this is just some of my work that I've shown, and I don't claim to be the greatest at everything. There's a huge gallery of different examples. These are all the different types of visualizations that R offers in their gallery. And then there's Shiny Gallery, where you can explore movie ratings and Oscar winners. And there's actually a nutrition calculator. If you're still on, Becky, you can look at MRIs, you can look at maps and sports, and I saw handwriting analysis and ROI.
Was there a social networking analysis on that previous screen? Did I see that as a little icon on the right-hand side? One back.
This one?
Yeah, it says network in purple.
Yeah, for
Second from the bottom
sure.
row.
I think
Nice.
so. I don't think there's anything you can't do. I think R and Python seem to be, for data scientists, what, are duking it out for top tools. Here's another really cool one for educators. This is for swimmers who are applying to college, where you can type in your times and see how you would compare to the current team at each of these schools, so that you can apply to the team that's going to give you the scholarship. I think that's so cool. And I recently saw a blog about animating. So this is a heat map of the percent of population in Europe over time, and you can see different countries and changing data. So there's always new features coming out. ROI calculator. I'm going to zoom through. You get the point. How to choose a dog. Politics. So to get started, here's some starting points. You want to install R first. That's the program that runs in your terminal, but since you probably want to be able to see and manage the workload better, there's an integrated development environment called RStudio. And R Markdown is part of RStudio. And so that's how you would get started. And Shiny is the environment for the web hosting. There's lots of introductory courses and courses where they give you a few free lessons to start out, which are really helpful. There's some excellent newsletters where you get daily updates, and I always scroll through them, and several times a week at least, it's like I could use that, and I email it to myself. And you can get help on the web in a lot of different places. There is our documentation, and these cheat sheets have been published for a number of the packages. So this is what someone asked about earlier. There's a steep learning curve. R does require coding. The syntax is idiosyncratic. There's many ways to do the same thing, which is good and bad. Functions get updated or deprecated, so you have to maintain them. And the output, well, accurate, sometimes needs to be massaged, and you can put a lot of effort into getting it to look just right. And similarly, Shiny requires coding, and it's an effort to create a nice UI, but you have maximum flexibility. And I find, tools that have maximum flexibility usually are a little bit harder to use. You have to understand server-side programming, so that's a whole nother step. And then testing and deploying isn't always easy. You have to, you upload it and then you have to see how it looks. And sometimes it's not exactly how it looked on your local machine. As I said, there's many tools and strategies that you can use, packages. You can learn to write functions. I highly recommend GitHub for tracking changes. There's help files built into everything. And you can learn to write better code and use comments and version control. There are alternatives or competitors to R, but I remind you that R Shiny is this full enterprise application, not just one of these. But, here's some statistics programs and maps programs and dashboards. And even Shiny can be deployed on platforms other than what I use. I know a little bit about some of these. A couple cautions before I wrap up. It's tempting to find a package that makes everything really easy, but there's trade-offs to that. So it feels like a shortcut. You look something up, you find something that does what you want at that moment. But when you do that, you have to reformat your data a particular way, or it's going to use names in your output a particular way. And it's idiosyncratic. So if you use some of these kind of shortcut packages, they don't necessarily play nice with the rest of the solutions. So I suggest you stick with well-known solutions, Cable, Tidyverse, ggplot. And if you invest in a package, learn it all the way. You don't want to be switching from package to package because it's going to change everything else in what you're trying to do. Also, this question about reproducibility. It's reproducible by who is a good question to ask. So you should ask yourself what you're going to do over and over, and then think about what your clients want to do over and over. And so those aren't necessarily the same thing. You don't want to be in this bottom right corner here where you're creating something for clients that they're not going to use, because there is a big effort involved. So my suggestion is to start with local and your own use, and then offer some possibilities to clients. So it can be frustrating learning in R. It can also be kind of thrilling and addictive when you start getting things to work, and it's kind of like solving a big puzzle. But there's a supportive ecosystem. I'll wrap up. If you want to collaborate, I can help with these things, proposing projects, validating measures or creating measures, helping with managed data flow and workflows, obviously statistics and creating reports and dashboards and presenting work and publishing work. I like to,
Jason,
I
go
like
ahead.
to have I like to have peer-reviewed work come out of evaluations because I think other people are interested in programs. I only have one more slide, Matt, so do you mind
Oh,
if I?
sorry, I thought you were wrapping up. I was gonna start
Yeah, I am
asking
wrapping up.
questions.
I'm wrapping up, and if we do work together, we're going to want to do all these good things to make sure that our collaboration is effective. So yeah, let's talk. I'll stop my share. Actually, I was going to show you a couple examples, but maybe we can talk and I can pull those up and then show you if time permits. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And I'm sure there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, let's see where we go with it, when we get into the question. But I do want to ask you a couple questions because you've been with the IC topic chat since nearly the beginning. I don't think you were there in the first couple months, I know. Um, and you've seen your consulting practice kind of grow and become more stable. It seems anyway, not that we've had a lot of conversations about it. I know I see you at the conferences and things, so that's a good indicator that things are going well enough for you. So I have some questions that I like to ask of the guest host that I know you're prepared for, because I've asked them from you before and you've been around. But if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? I mean, if you think back, I don't know how many years ago you started your practice, but if you think back to some of those early days, what would you do differently?
I would have said yes when someone offered me a business planning service for $500 that I didn't have. In retrospect,
By the way, I'm offering a $500 business planning service to anybody who's interested. I'm not. I'm just joking. I could be.
that would have been helpful. I do a lot of things, and I've got a, long storied past and strong network, and I had clients right away, and that allowed me to just kind of push forward doing stuff. But particularly, over the years and wanting to grow a little bit, I think I would have taken them up on that offer in retrospect.
Knowing what you know now and understanding the environment of program evaluation and data services, is now a good time to start an independent consulting practice?
So yeah, I kind of knew you were going to ask this. I'm going to say yes and no. I think I'm going to say for the older folks, yes, and for the younger folks, if you like working in a company and you can work for a firm where you're mentored and given opportunities and you have a team to support you and you get benefits and get that 401k going. Not to discourage anyone who's already made the plunge, but I think that there's a lot of value in that and building networks. If you're older, I know some people who are feeling aged out of the job market. Um, or if you're just fed up with being an employee, like kind of like I was, then yes. So that's a little bit more of a complicated answer, but that's where I'm coming down on this one today.
Lily, did you want to ask your question on the recorded thing, or did you want to wait until afterwards, until I stop the recording? Go ahead then. If you don't care, go ahead.
Okay. I don't care. I'm really curious. This was great, Jason, and I've dabbled in R Shiny a little bit, but I've never learned to master R at all. I just have played with it. But I'm really curious how AI is affecting your thoughts on what to learn and programming and your processes, because I feel like I've had the thought for like 10 years, like, okay, I can do enough, but then there's all these other technologies, and how are they going to influence it, and how much time do I invest in learning these things when it feels like the landscape is changing a lot? And I think we'll be doing less coding in general. So I don't know if you agree or you have other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts about that. One is R can do machine learning algorithms. So you can be learning R and actually getting into the AI field yourself. That's one thought. There's also Shiny can integrate with OpenAI chatbots, for example, I've seen, and obviously, and there is a plugin where you put ChatGPT into your RStudio so you can ask it questions actually while you're coding. I tried that once. And you can go out to the AI world and ask questions. And I tell you, sometimes it's great and sometimes it just hallucinates its face off. And you're like, what? And you're just like, okay, it starts getting really complicated and spinning these crazy tales about what you need to be doing. And you're like, no, I just want to do something really simple. And you have to say, let's start over again. And so you have to learn how to ask it kind of step by step. Sometimes it's like, boom, it knows exactly what you want. But of course, it helps if you know what you're asking. But even when I know what I'm asking, sometimes it'll hallucinate something that just doesn't work. But overall, I've used it, and on balance, it's been helpful.
I guess, does it affect how you think about the actual coding? Does it, I guess you're such an expert at doing all the coding that maybe it doesn't matter. But like for someone like me who's like not mastered, all the different packages, do you think that it's a good time to learn because you can, or use it because you can more easily write the code? Or would you say it's not at that level where?
Yeah, it'll help you write code. I mean, there's also tools built in, like there's templates built into RStudio. When you create a Shiny package, it creates a template for you. And also, all these examples that I show, there's example code of something that works on the web already. So I would say yes, use it, but don't, there's other resources available too.
All right, I'm gonna cut this off, but I am gonna say to all those folks listening to this, watching this on YouTube, what you're listening to just now between Lily and Jason was a perfect example of what we do when we hit stop. If you don't come to our sessions live, what we typically do is we stop the recording and then we get into this exchange like you just saw. We have a lot more, well, chats, because that's what this is called after all, IC topic chat. So with that, make sure you show up to for the YouTube folks, everybody else stick around. But make sure you show up to our sessions whenever you get a chance to do it live. If you have that opportunity, you can see that's what we do. We spend a lot of time chatting about whatever the person just talked about. So I'm going to ask the question, does it make sense to start with Stata, SPSS, or R? But we're not going to go there right now. I'm going to stop it. But that's going to be the next question, and we're going to get into that dialogue soon. But if you're in YouTube land, I'll see y'all later. Everybody else stick around.